finally, we will be talking about the laws affecting international um, negotiations, and we could spend an entire semester on this. There are entire law degrees that deal just with this issue, okay? So we're barely scratching the surface, but hopefully making you aware of some of the things. Now, I will not be addressing things like the need for a visa and passport and all of that stuff. You guys are all traveled, you know those basics. But when it comes to the laws that we're going to be dealing with, and the things that we need to be aware of, this is where we want to spend our time. So, there are a multitude of laws that you are going to face when you decide to do business internationally. Depending on what you're involved in, what your business is, you're looking at technology laws. So, is the technology allowed in that country? Do they have the technology you need? Who owns the technology? As far as employment is concerned, if you are negotiating something where you are direct investing, and you're going to need to comply with employment laws of that country. You are going to be looking at I need to look that up real quick. The Maquiladora laws allows duty-free import of equipment, machinery, and materials to assemble parts of products that are then returned to the home country. So if you set up a manufacturing plant over there, depending on what you set up and how you set up it, you're going to be taxed differently than if you own everything. So those laws play into effect. Then you have laws that come out of the International Court of Justice or the World Court, and you will need to comply with those laws and regulations. And we've got contract laws that will be different from one country to another. There are constant problems with patents, because a patent that exists only in the US is not valid necessarily in other countries. So you may need to file patents in multiple countries. We have a number of issues that come out of ethics, and in your ethics class, hopefully you will be covering a number of international ethical considerations. And then international travel and the law is another aspect of laws that we need to pay attention to. So let's start breaking this down a little bit. The basis of rule in a country, is it the rule of man or the rule of law? So in the rule of man, ultimate authority resides in a person whose word and whim, no matter how unfair or unjust, is it, okay, or is law. A couple letters missing there. So countries where you have an authoritarian government, where you have a dictatorship, you're working under the rule of man. Countries that are more on a democracy or socialist, mixed government, you're going to be typically dealing with rule of law more. So no one, whether public official or private citizen, is above the law, would be the rule of law. So we also have in the legal system different ways that we interpret, stipulate, and enforce the law. So in a legal system, you have constitutional law, you have criminal law, civil or commercial law, and religious law. And countries will tend to honor one over the other a lot stronger depending on their philosophy. So the color coding here indicates the peach are countries, excuse me, under the civil law. Blue is common law. Green is Muslim law. Yellowish there is customary law, and then you see quite a few countries that use a mixed system. So the legal system of common law, it originated in England, spread to Australia, Canada, US, and also other former members of the British Commonwealth. So the basis of law is tradition, past practices, and legal precedents that are set by the courts. So we always look at how things were resolved in the past, and we use those judgments for the future. So it is, very based on tradition and past practices and legal precedents. Judges have much power to interpret the law based on the cases that they review. Under civil law, which is found in France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Turkey, and much of Latin America, it's based on an all-inclusive system of law that has been codified. So laws are written and followed. So the written law is more important than how it's been interpreted in the past. So it's more cast in stone, and the main difference from common law to civil law is that common law is mainly judicial in origin and based on court decisions, whereas civil law is legislative and based on what has been codified and written. So this is a sampling of differences between civil and common law. Enforcing agreements. So in common law, we want proof of agreement is sufficient. In civil law, the commercial agreement is enforced only if properly notarized and registered. So as far as the specificity of contracts, under common law, contracts tend to be very detailed with all possible contingencies spelled out, and it costs a lot more to write, to draw up. Under civil law, contracts tend to be brief because many of the problems are already covered in civil code and don't need to be addressed again. Religious law. So some countries are regulated more based on religious legal systems that are based on Hindu, Jewish, or Islamic law. And so those religious beliefs and ethical codes, moral values are mandated by a supreme being. Islamic law, for example, spells out norms of behavior regarding politics, economics, banking, contracts, marriage, and other social and business situations. A lot of countries have mixed systems where they will have religious law and another law overimposed. So totalitarianism has religious and socialist law. Democracies have common civil laws and mixed systems. So countries with primarily common law: Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, United States, United Kingdom. Primarily civil law, much of the West, Europe and Latin America, Japan, Russia, and South Korea. Primarily religious law, much of the Middle East and North Africa, Afghanistan, Mauritania, Pakistan, and Sudan. and mixed systems, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Israel, Kenya, Malaysia, Philippines. Other things to take into account in international negotiations are other players. So you've got government or public sector who may play a part in the negotiations. You have international organizations such as the World Bank or World Trade Organization or United Nations. You have regional economic blocs. This is something we haven't talked about because we're talking in this class on negotiation of company to company rather than the bloc. So the European Union, NAFTA, and many, many others. You have special interest groups such as labor unions and environmental advocates. And then you have local competing firms who may oppose the foreign firm coming in. We need to take into account the types of risks that are produced by the legal systems. And these country risks may arise from the host country legal environment. And it may be simple, you can read through those. It could be the marketing and distribution laws. It could be inadequate or underdeveloped legal systems, or it could be differences or issues that arise from internet and e-commerce regulations. Then other risks, so government takeover is a concern in certain countries based on the laws. Confiscation, expropriation, nationalization. You could be looking at other risks such as embargoes and sanctions. So governments may be, so this is something that we have faced over the last 3 years of Trump's government, where he has reversed certain agreements that we had with other countries. And every president in every nation has the right, I guess you could say, to make some of these changes. And then we have the different blocks of countries may decide together or may impose on each other embargoes and sanctions based on what's happening as we do business with other countries. We also have boycotts. So it's a voluntary refusal to engage in commercial dealings with a nation or a company. And so if you're caught in the crossfires of a boycott, it could severely affect your negotiation or the enforcement of a business contract. And you may simply be stuck in the issues and the problems. We have wars and insurrections, we have terrorism, so violence. These are also risks that companies face. And then there are a number of laws that are at different levels of the world that could affect as well. So foreign corrupt practices, anti-boycotting regulations, accounting and reporting laws, transparency and financial reporting are all things that should be taken a look at in a negotiation process. Other country risks are foreign investment laws. So does that country allow you to own property, or do you have to have joint ownership? Off the top of my head, I know that Mexico, Brazil, and India have foreign investment laws that American companies don't necessarily like when they do business in those countries. But we have to negotiate there. Controls on operating forms and practices. So we need to take a close look at what those are doing for production, for marketing, and for distribution. Marketing and distribution laws regulate advertising, promotion, and distribution, and you have to comply with certain things. So pharmaceuticals are highly controlled in Canada and in certain other countries. Cigarette advertising is forbidden in certain countries and not in others. Advertising to children, the quantity of advertising or the types of advertising, if it feels manipulative by that culture. So we need to pay attention and deal with all of those. Then we have laws on income repatriation. So how much money can you exit out of that country and bring back to your home country is regulated. Environmental laws of natural resources, pollution, and safety are going to be different in different countries. And then contract laws as well. We've talked a little bit about inadequate or underdeveloped legal systems that may increase risk in doing business. And then the foreign correct practices, US companies are restricted on the size of gift, and they're restricted on bribes. And some countries will close you down if you have a monopoly in that country, and the list can go on. Accounting and reporting laws, how things are listed, and it's very complicated to reconcile your books from differing methodologies around the world. And what is considered to be transparency in financial reporting in one country may not be viewed as transparency in another. So I know that is a lot of materials, but I wanted you to just get a grasp of the complexity. And if you're negotiating investment, especially in a country, or you're wanting to sell your products actively in another country, you may need to involve international lawyers who understand doing business in these countries, so that you make arrangements that will work for both countries and both companies. So that takes us through the end of the textbook, the end of our chapters.